Welcome into No Punt Intended, presented by Club Fantasy. First show of 2021, falling on what is the greatest of days, as some have called it today. But we're here to give you guys a little distraction from all the chaotic stuff that is happening right now here today. And we're going to do it by wrapping up the 2020 fantasy football season, which rightfully so was the most chaotic season, obviously due to COVID. We are here not to just wrap up the season. We are here to actually hold ourselves accountable, specifically these three guys, because I don't do preseason rankings, but these guys do. Josh,
now I know why, so you can duck out of holding yourself accountable. Is that it? Yeah.
I held myself accountable for my sleepers, which are a lot harder to hit on, might I add. But joining me, as always, Josh and Ryan, and first time on the show, but not new to Club Fantasy if you read any of his content. Contributor sometimes on the website, very rarely just because he does have a law job. Dude is very busy, but thanks for joining us, Chris.
Thanks for having me. I am very excited to be on. You can find me on Twitter at Mo2413, and I just wanted to tell y'all I'm back in action this off season. That's where I shine. The in-season stuff is too much for me, but let's go off season.
I was going to say, Chris is already the most successful member of this pod just on his outside life.
Right?
I didn't say it. Ryan did.
It's like Josh bartends at Red Lobster. Ryan's a stay-at-home dad. I'm unemployed, and Chris is a lawyer. So who's really the most accomplished one here, right?
Chris
who's
is like,
really?
I'll do the show. Just promise me no one's going to see it.
Yeah. Right? Who's really the most accomplished
back
one
on
here? But thank you everyone for joining in. If you have any, if you did your preseason rankings, you can even drop in some of the guys that you either nailed, which Josh was just a few points off of one of the guys on his rankings, which is pretty impressive. Some of the guys you just completely missed on, and then maybe a couple surprises that you or nobody expected to happen, whether that be some guy jumped into the top 12, top 10, or some guy that you're like, how the heck did he fall this far? There's no way this should have happened. So the month of January, all about accountability. Today, of course, starting with the most important position in football, the kicker position. So all these guys did kicker rankings before the season. No, nobody wants to butt in and just...
I did.
I'm gonna punt. I'm gonna punt to you, Joe.
Thank you. I didn't do kicker rankings. I take that back. No, we're going to start with the quarterback position. Next week, running backs, then receivers, and then tight ends in the following week. And then, of course, that'll lead us right up to Super Bowl Sunday. Super excited to have Mark Drumheller join us for that show. So starting off here, who did you nail? Because we got to start on a high note here. So it's going to be essentially, where did you have them in the preseason, and where did they fall end of season? So Josh, starting with you, who did you hit the nail right on the head with, and you were literally 4.4 points away from nailing this person directly on the head, Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah. Projections, first off, not easy at all.
No.
Very, very difficult. But it was a fun experiment doing this for the first year, and really doing this is kind of what helped bring Ryan onto the show. So I'm kind of glad I did. Thanks, Ryan, for, stepping in and doing all this with us. So
absolutely.
But yeah, no, with Mahomes, I mean, look, we all knew he was going to pass. I did project him for over 5,000 yards, but I had him right at 38 touchdowns. I had him at 2 rushing touchdowns. He had 40 total touchdowns, 38 passing, 2 rushing. When you look at, we pull our final rankings off of fantasy data. They had Mahomes as QB3, and he had 400 and what was it?
I have it up. Hold on.
450.4 fantasy points.
Yeah.
And again, we do our projections with 6 points per passing touchdown. He finished the year I had him projected, at 446. So I was literally 4.4 points off. I had him as my QB1. So if you did end up paying that price and you got that final tally out of him, I think you were pretty happy, especially because he ended up sitting in week 17, and you guys should only be playing your championships up to week 16. So
that's right.
Yeah.
You did it wrong.
And he finished quarterback.
Championships?
Right? Yeah. Chris finishing last in our dynasty league.
No,
correct?
not last.
No.
Not last.
Second to last.
Second to last.
Listen,
And
Chris,
I took over
a bad team. We're going to preface that. He took over a very bad team. So,
Chris, I'm just happy I finished 7th. I'm the best of the losers. That is improvement from my squad. And also,
you're welcome, Ryan.
That Jonathan Taylor pick at the 102 in the rookie draft looked mighty fine in week 17. Again, terrible defense. Indy was actually playing for something, so they were, actually playing football. Jaguars just trying to play spoiler. But shout out Jonathan Taylor.
Yes.
You are a god. Don't listen to the naysayers who were like, he's nothing. It's week 10. He's nothing. No. You wait. The Wisconsin product's about to blow everyone's mind next season. Josh, your second guy. So you had you didn't essentially nail his end of season projections, mostly because he got a cramp in week 5. Dak small cramp, according to medical doctor Tony Romo. Dak's per game pace, you were pretty damn good at.
Yeah, I statted him out. He was my QB3. He was the only other quarterback that I statted out that would finish with over 5,000 yards. And a lot of that was when you look back at Mike McCarthy's time with Green Bay, pacing that out and what you ultimately expected him to bring to the offense in conjunction with how Kellen Moore operated the offense in Dallas the year prior. I had him at 5,070, 31 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Yes, we know he got hurt in week 5, finishing, though, in 5 games with almost 2,000 yards. That's not easy to do, no matter how you slice it. But if you pace that out over 16 games, the yardage was crazy, 5,900 yards, which, again, I don't think anybody realistically thought he would hit that.
No.
But it would have come out to 29 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, and 10 rushing touchdowns. So that 16-game pace from a fantasy perspective would have netted 475.36 points, which would have put him at QB2 looking at how this statted out. So I'm not mad that I had him as a QB3. I'm more mad about the unfortunate circumstances from a fantasy manager, not from an Eagles fan. But again, I mean, this is kind of what all of us were thinking when Dak took over, was like, he brings the rushing upside and he's going to sling it. That's exactly what he was doing. So I think that I was kind of on that same wavelength.
Yeah, and we had already seen it the year before, and we just expected more volume out of McCarthy. So, I mean, it was a great call on your part. You just don't expect a man's leg to come outside of his ankle. It's just not how
No. Cramp.
Oh, I'm sorry. Cramp.
I
don't know how I keep getting those two confused.
Yeah, I don't know how you get, a bone outside the leg confused with a cramp, Ryan. They're the same thing. They're the exact same thing. Yep.
6 and 1.
I think it's ridiculous that Dak was on pace to throw for almost 6,000 passing yards, and his defense was on pace to be the second worst defense of all time. That's unbelievable. When you take the two into account that his defense is allowing 35 points per game, that means Dak probably has to throw the ball 60 times a game, which would then lead to that amount of passing yards. Just still crazy to think about. And let's slide down here now, Josh. I'll skip over these last couple that you have just to get a couple more people involved. Ryan, you said Russell Wilson, but Russ, you said everyone hit on Russ. So.
Yeah, I happened to get him exactly on the projection. He was my QB4. He finished as the QB4. He did, numbers-wise, what I think most of us expected him to do. But even worse, he did exactly what he did last season, where he was just so damn good for half the season. And then I don't want to make jokes that he forgot how to play football in the second half of the season.
He forgot how to play football.
But he was, for the first 8 games, he was the QB3. For the second 8 games, he was the QB12. He scored 12 fewer fantasy points per game in the second 8 games than he did in the first 8 games. You literally lost an entire running back of scoring from first 8 games of Russell Wilson to the second 8 games of Russell Wilson every week. And that was just, he does this every year where he gets you to the playoffs. And I made the joke last year, and it runs again this year, is that you live by Russell Wilson and then you die by Russell Wilson. He is going to kill you at the end of the year.
Yeah, Chris is a Rams fan, I think, can attest to that one.
Yeah, I was looking, and he had 20 28 passing touchdowns in the first 8 games, only 12 in the back half.
Yeah.
Lockett and Metcalf also both fell off a cliff. So it's just like, well, that's Russell Wilson for you. I tried to tell people.
But let's talk about the guys who had the most turnovers in the last 2 years at the quarterback position in the NFL, though, because it's not Daniel Jones.
Surprisingly, which he's going to come up with.
Surprisingly, right? Except
Winning
the biggest difference between Daniel Jones and Jared Goff is one gets paid $35 million a year to blindly throw around a football at his receiver's feet. And Daniel Jones is a first-round pick, so he can't really help that. They're the same person.
Winning record.
Yeah, well, different record. That's not because of Goff. Jenna, congrats! Woo!
Yes, congrats, Jenna, and thanks again for your service.
Yes, we appreciate the service. We also appreciate you listening. We definitely appreciate both things, and we're glad that we're one of the people that were able to help you onto a fantasy championship. So congratulations on that. All right, so Ryan, your big one, Tom Brady. I didn't even see this coming as a Patriots fan. So go ahead.
Yeah, now I'm going to be perfectly honest. I did not get close on really. I mean, I didn't dig too deep down, but I didn't get close on a lot of people's total fantasy points like Josh did. So kudos to Josh. This was my second year doing projections. In year one, I gave way too many touchdowns out. So last year I Ebenezer Scrooged it and I wanted to hold all of them and I wasn't going to give them out to people. And then of course the defenses decide that they're going to give touchdowns to everybody. Something we talked about with all the quarterbacks over 400.
It's the Oprah syndrome. You get a touchdown.
Yeah,
you get a touchdown. Everybody gets a touchdown.
So if I had been in my 2019 mindset while doing 2020 projections, I probably would have been closer. But with Brady, one of the big knocks, and Joe, you and I got into it on the show a little bit with, can Brady throw the deep ball?
He can't. It's statistically proven. He cannot. He was the worst deep ball thrower in the NFL this year.
However, led the NFL in deep balls thrown, much like Jameis Winston did in this offense the year before.
Yep.
Second in air yards, fifth in passing yards, 40 passing touchdowns, and 12 of them were for more than 20 yards out. Only Aaron Rodgers, who threw 15, threw more touchdowns from outside of the 20-yard line than Tom Brady did this entire season.
When you have Mike Evans.
It does.
Also, when you're Aaron Rodgers, it helps you have the best receiver in the league in Devontae Adams. So, I mean,
there you go.
We're pulling straws at that point.
Only one game all season where he did not throw a touchdown, and only 3 games where he didn't throw multiple touchdowns. So it was a hell of a year and a hell of an offense, and that was something I really saw coming. He ranked out for me as the QB 8, and he finished as the QB 7. And I think it was just a product of the wide receivers. It's something we said about Jameis, is we didn't know how good Jameis was, but he was a hell of a fantasy quarterback because of those targets. And the targets got better with Gronkowski. Whether he was a great football player or not, he was a weapon Brady needed in this offense, especially when every wide receiver on the team decided to get hurt, and then every running back on the team decided to get hurt. And it wasn't the prettiest season for Brady, and it wasn't the prettiest season for the Buccaneers, but he did sort of what I expected him to do. I just expected far less touchdowns because I didn't think anyone would hit 40 this year.
I will say everyone that wasn't calling Tom Brady's grave, saying that his career was over after he left New England because, he doesn't have his arm anymore. He's not the same player. Everyone who wasn't saying that knew he was going to excel in Tampa. I don't think anyone expected this out of him. They knew the weapons: Godwin, Evans, Scotty Miller. They add Antonio Brown, Howard when he was healthy, Cameron Brate, Gronk, you name it. They got him everything. Everyone knew he was going to have a good year, but I think he exceeded.
Oh, God, yes. I mean, Chris and I both had him top 12. I mean, it wasn't like we thought he was going to be terrible, but I just felt that obviously when you deal with a 43-year-old quarterback, there's so much risk involved. And do you really want to be that guy that takes that, or girl to take that risk? You know what I mean? So, again, kudos to you, Ryan. You had a lot more faith in him than I certainly did. But I mean, 40 touchdowns. Yeah, helped all that coming.
I just double checked. I only had him at 32 touchdowns. I almost had his yardage on the nose. I was like 50 yards off on the yardage, but I had him at 32 touchdowns. So that makes up for a lot of points. But thankfully, because I screwed everyone out of touchdowns, it still statted him out where he needed to finish. So,
and for the record, in championship week 16, Tom Brady, I think, put up 40 fantasy points.
And 75% of the game.
he played a half They benched him at halftime.
Oh, I thought he came in the third quarter.
No,
Okay.
they benched him at halftime.
Yeah, they
He
were
put-
up like 47-7 at halftime.
gross. It was gross. But so you have Josh Allen, who played almost a little over 3 quarters, and he put up, I think, 3 or 4 more points than Brady. Brady played a half and put up almost the same. Absurd. So if you had Tom Brady in your championship lineup, I mean, congrats. That probably helped you win. But you're also kind of like, damn, if he played the rest of the game, though, I thought Arians was going to let him break the record because, wow, is Detroit bad.
Yeah.
Detroit's defense is abysmal.
I think you were just looking for that so Nick Foles wasn't in the record book anymore.
Yes, no, 100%. I do not want Nick Foles in the same conversation as Peyton Manning for most passing touchdowns in a game. What the hell?
I really thought he was going to let him break it as well because of what Kamara did. So I just I would've thought he would have been like, oh, he went out here and did this. Let's show him that we can do this kind of shit too. And I don't know, the competitive spirit in the NFL interests me sometimes. So.
Listen, it doesn't matter. Tom Brady's going to shred the Washington football team this week after the dumbass rookie Chase Young called him out. Chase Young, great player. Don't call out Tom Brady. Everyone knows not to do that because he's going to smoke your team. It's that
All
simple.
he said was, I want Tom.
Yeah, Ryan, that's all he needs. That is all he needs.
That's true.
That's all he needs.
It's the Michael Jordan meme. And
Yeah.
I took that personal or whatever.
Yeah, that's all he needs. All right, Chris, to you. So you have 2 running quarterbacks between Josh Allen and Kyler Murray. Go ahead, give your analysis. You had these guys where they were going to finish essentially this season.
So I called Kyler Murray as my number 7 QB in 6-point fantasy, and he ended up being number 6. Yeah. I was looking at the completions, and I was only off by 6 total completions. He had 369 completions. I statted him out, or he had 375, and I statted him out for 369.
That's an impressive stat to get right on that high of a volume offense. So good job.
Thanks. I was a little off on passing yards. I was about 200 yards off, but I nailed the passing touchdowns. I had him for 26, and he did have 26 passing touchdowns. Now, what I didn't take into account was his rushing at the beginning the first half of the season. It was just nuts. But as soon as he got hurt, it fell off the table, and I'm glad because I would have been a little bit off on his rushing yards, but we'll see. Josh Allen, though, I wanted to do my victory lap on Josh Allen. I have been staking my credibility all offseason and the offseason before that on Josh Allen. I had him for 6-point fantasy. I had him at 6. For 4-point, I actually had him at 4. In 6-point, I had him at 6, and he finished as the number 2 QB. He kind of jumped a couple of people there in week 17. But a lot of people didn't think he had the passing aspect, but even I didn't. I had him for, about 3,600 yards passing, and he blew past my passing projection. I had him for 25 touchdowns, blew past it, and I just wanted to celebrate that. I know I wasn't that close in projections, but I wanted to celebrate.
Now, Chris has been on the Josh Allen hype train since the beginning. So take your victory laps, dude, because I was bashing this kid when he got drafted. He looked so inaccurate and so overwhelmed his first year, very just lost. And this year, you gave this guy a legit number 1 wide receiver, and holy crap, Stephon Diggs helped Josh Allen just absolutely elevate his game. And he took the type of leap that you want to see from young quarterbacks. So hats off, Josh Allen. I swung and a missed bad on this guy. So, I mean, I did have him. Where did I have Allen going into this year? I had him at, I had him at 9. I mean, he's still, I still had him top 12. So obviously,
I think the craziest thing for and Chris, you brought it up. He finished well in your rankings, but we didn't really project him well, and I did the same thing. Was how the hell were we ever going to project him at 70% completions? And this is kind of in my notes for the guy I just didn't see coming. But he was 52% as a rookie, 58% as a second year. So I gave him a small leap due to Diggs. And I say small, it was a 3% bump, which is actually pretty damn big in the NFL. You don't expect a guy to get an 11% bump from year 2 to year 3. It's just incredible what he did with Stephon Diggs there.
he helped Stephon Diggs as much as
Yes.
Stephon Diggs helped him. I think a lot of people missed on Diggs as well, thinking, with the Josh Allen effect. And even I was like, safe wide receiver too. I'd have to see how he ended up in my projections, but he absolutely took off, and you could tell Josh Allen put that work in this offseason with his throwing mechanics too.
We'll talk on Diggs in a couple weeks, but Chris, you were the highest on Diggs among the three of us. So kudos.
Diggs was the guy I was embarrassed by when I was putting those numbers in for accountability.
I had him the lowest.
Yeah, I saw yours.
I was like, damn.
Josh was way out.
But to be fair, Josh, you have a big win at wide receiver. And again, we'll talk about that in 2 weeks. But I don't know that I have the win that you have at wide receiver to make up for being so wrong about Stephon Diggs. So.
Do we have to invite Stoner on for that show for the victory lap, or just asking for a friend here? But looking at Josh Allen, I always say I think completion percentage is an absolute bullshit stat, and because Drew Brees dumps off to Alvin Kamara and his completion percentage is 80%.
I promise you, Joe, as I was typing the completion percentage into my notes, I'm like, God, I know Joe's going to bitch at me about this.
But here's the thing. I looked at it, and I don't have average air yards or anything like that in front of me. But adjusted yards gained per pass attempt are yards gained per pass attempt. Josh Allen actually gained 1.2 yards more per pass attempt. Meaning in that instance, he is still throwing the ball all over the field. And that was very clearly shown too, just watching with the plain naked eye. He was throwing the ball all over the field. So I don't discount his uptick in completion percentage because he's just dumping it off to Devin Singletary. No, he's actually whipping the ball across the field.
And even crazier is John Brown wasn't there and healthy for a large portion of this season.
Gabriel Davis, baby.
And I love Gabriel Davis, but Brown, you have to admit, is likely better at this point in their careers.
Oh, yeah.
We may not have seen Josh Allen's ceiling yet. That's incredible. So
that's what I like to hear.
Among starting quarterbacks, Josh Allen was 5th in yards per attempt at 7.9. So, I mean, they ran the second most 4 wide receiver sets this year.
You brought that up in the season, and that was shocking as well.
They came out to throw the football this year. And when you look at how this offense has looked the last 2 years, I don't think anybody in their right mind would have projected Josh Allen's passing to look remotely close to this.
That reminded me. I was looking into it, and we always credit Drew Brees with this completion percentage stat. But Drew Brees, that's what reminded me of it. He had 6 intended air yards per attempt. Drew Brees did, throwing at 70%. Josh Allen was close to 9, throwing at 70% as well.
That's the impressive part this year.
So my point
to me, before you go on, Joe,
yeah,
which to me, it makes you wonder, can he keep that up next year? I mean, because you're talking about a guy in year 3.
It feels a lot.
Is this the ceiling? Is this the anomaly where he's going to come back down to earth and burn some people next year? I'm not saying he will. I'm not saying he won't. I'm just saying it's a legitimate question.
It feels a lot like the Mahomes 50 touchdowns. It feels a lot like Lamar Jackson's efficiency last year, to where it's almost has to come down, but he's probably going to come down and still be a top 5 quarterback, and people are going to be bitching about him next year. And it's like, bro, he still did what he did what he was supposed to do in 2020. You're just mad because he went bananas in 2020.
Yeah. And I'll touch on that a little bit later when we do bring up Lamar Jackson, because I've got some interesting nuggets to share.
So I mean, I think he falls to probably 65%. That's a 4% fall off from 69.2.
Yeah, and still a 7% jump up from year 2. So.
And again, the dude throws deep. It's not like Drew Brees falling off, and it's like, oh no, Alvin Kamara's not running all over the field. Oh no. Yeah, so completion percentage is bullshit. It's a terrible stat. It is an utterly terrible stat. You just
when I was typing up my Tom Brady deep ball stuff, I was like, Joe might just kick me off the show. Like this might be
Ryan, I said it before the season without the statistics to back me up. Tom Brady is a bad deep ball thrower. This season, Tom Brady is statistically the worst deep ball passer in the NFL.
And
not
the
even
best
close.
At the same time.
because he threw the ball 300 times down the field.
That's right.
If you were looking for the air yard stats, Josh Allen was second in air yards per attempt to Deshaun Watson this year.
What was Drew Brees? 27th. Right, because Michael Thomas didn't play the entire season, so he had to be. Actually, he was probably there's 32 NFL starting quarterbacks.
Drew Brees was tied for 22nd at 3.7.
Drew Brees sucks. Come on, we're gonna sit here and say Drew Brees is still elite at this age. Is that what we're gonna do? Oh,
well, maybe we really have seen the second coming of Drew Brees since Tua Tagovailoa had the exact same air yard.
Tua, who just threw 3 freaking picks in a playoff potential clinching game. Tua is the same quarterback as Drew effing Brees. Oh, get that shit out of here. Drew Brees is check down city since 2015.
Even worse, he's only 0.1 ahead of Nick Mullins, who was 0 for large points in the
Nick
season.
effing Mullins.
Another fun one. You think Drew Brees is so bad? Ben Roethlisberger was worse.
Yeah, I just saw that.
Who's been saying the Steelers are frauds? What? I don't even need to look at stats.
I think a lot of that too, though, is they don't have a running game in Pittsburgh, and that their running game was basically
sure.
Juju and Deontay.
Yeah, so that makes sense. The quick wide receiver screens. And
the difference is New Orleans has a running game, and they're still not going downfield.
Yeah.
Well, again, Drew Brees can't see over the offensive lineman. He can't move, and he didn't have Michael Thomas. So
I'll never forget when the NFL was anti-Saints after the whole Bounty Gate and everything came out, where they spent the entire...
I'm still anti-Saints.
There you go. But they spent an entire half of Monday Night Football just straight up clowning Drew Brees for his inability to see over the line. And I can't unsee it now, and I can't even describe it. But how a normal quarterback's head is level when he throws the ball. They kept pointing out that Drew Brees has to look up every single time he throws the ball. And now when you watch Drew Brees play, that's literally all you see. It just stuck with me, and I'm like, wow.
Yeah. He looks out the bottom of his face mask and then realizes, oh shit, I can't see over them, and then turns to his right. Sees Alvin Kamara 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage. And oh god, my favorite, and I'll bring this up anytime we talk about average air yards. My favorite yards per attempt is Derek Carr in London against the Seattle Seahawks. He had a 0.1 average yards per attempt.
Well, didn't Nick Mullins have 0 in a game this year? Air yards?
Listen.
Are negative?
Listen,
it was
Ryan,
something ridiculous.
Ryan, I don't know. All I know is that Nick Mullins is Jimmy Garoppolo. They're the same person. That's all I know.
That's 100% fair.
It's 100%. And Nick Mullins has a better out route than Jimmy Garoppolo does. Garoppolo's arm strength is equivalent to those used car lot flyy thingies that do this.
Wacky wavy inflatable
the wacky wavy inflatable tube man from from Family Guy. That's Jimmy Garoppolo's arm. Noodle arm. He's terrible. Okay, let's move on before I rip through my computer
I would also
screen.
like to point out with Kyler Murray, he did finish his QB6. I had him actually at QB6.
I'm Josh. I finished QB6. Yeah. No, I know this is what this whole thing's about. I'm still gonna mock you for it, though. No, it's impressive.
Joe killing Josh on the whole.
It's okay. We're gonna get to all the misses, so I'm gonna take my victory lap while I can.
Listen, going through projections and doing that and nailing it. You may not get the stats right, but nailing their end of season is like, all right, that's it's satisfying, right? And then you get humbled by a guy like Carson Wentz, Josh, in your case.
We'll
talk about it. Talk about the former Eagles starting quarterback, now disgraced Eagles backup quarterback, Carson Wentz. Third string quarterback. Yes, thank you. Behind the elite, the elite Nate Sudfeld. Might I add, the elite Nate Sudfeld. 5 snaps, 2 turnovers.
By the way, I know we skipped over my Eagles rant at the beginning of the show because at this point it really doesn't feel.
Yeah, it shouldn't matter at this point.
It shouldn't matter. I'm going to touch on it here just quickly. If you really wanted to get Nate Sudfeld reps, if that was the goal, start the frickin' game with him. Don't bring him in at the half or in the third quarter or whatever the hell it was because I was so freaking blackout drunk that I didn't care at that point. But in a one-score game. You don't do that. I'm sorry. You don't do that. Anyway, back to the point. Look, we know Wentz got benched. We get it. He's terrible this year. The injuries mounted on all over the offense. Miles Sanders missed games. They didn't have Jeffrey. They didn't have Djax. If they did, I don't think it would have mattered too much. But they spent the draft to go out and draft wide receivers with speed. The whole idea was we're going to throw the ball down the field. Wentz has an arm, and he has decent accuracy on the deep ball. But with the offensive line injuries, they couldn't do that. And the problem was Doug Peterson didn't adjust to that game plan. In my projections, I had Wentz at a 7.7 yards per pass attempt. Not even close to that. He ended up with 6.0 yards per attempt. The team as a whole, 6.2. So I know I got a lot of flack for projecting Wentz as a top 12 quarterback. And at this point, sure, hindsight 2020, rightfully so. But if everything had worked the way that it should, which again, this is why we do the projections, because this is what we ultimately think is going to happen. They set everything up to succeed like that. Injuries obviously played a part. Wentz's wrecked confidence. All I can say is big L on my part. It wasn't a homer pick. I'm trying. I want to get that point across.
It was a
I
little
wasn't the
homer
only
pick.
one that thought Wentz would continue to take those steps. But again, you're dealing with rookies in a pandemic year, no off season. Some of them we've seen, Justin Jefferson, prime example, he blew up. We get it. Some offenses work great, others don't. Doug Peterson sucks. Why the hell does he still have a job? I have no clue.
Well, I think a large part of the yards per attempt thing, just to give you a pass and by default give myself a pass, is the way we do our projections. We project the wide receivers, and then that gets us to the quarterback. And you have guys like Deshaun Jackson. We projected Jalen Reagor as a Deshaun Jackson-esque wide receiver. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside was projected as this is just going by my rankings. I had him as the wide receiver 3, so you know how well that worked out.
Oh, hold on. Shout out J.J. Arcega-Whiteside for catching a contested deep ball in Week 17.
There you go.
Showing signs of life, Mr. Arcega-Whiteside.
His next team's going to thoroughly enjoy that.
Yes, his next team's going to love it. He's going to love his 2 catches per season.
Yeah.
But even Arcega-Whiteside and Alshon Jeffrey, we probably projected as higher yards per catch guy. We just didn't expect that none of those guys were going to be around, and we were going to end up with half a year of Travis Fulgham and half a year of nothing because Ertz wasn't there. We didn't expect Ertz to take the step back. He did. Like everything about that offense outside of Miles Sanders when healthy, everything about that offense took a huge step backwards from what we expected.
Well, I mean, they led the NFL last year in total plays.
Yes.
I mean, they ran the football a ton, and they didn't do anything close to that this year. So when you see these types of projections where, because again, this is what we're working on. We're working on last year's information. We're averaging out, last 3 to 5 years worth of stats with these offensive play callers. And it's a guessing game. It's really what it is. Putting this team where I had them at 603 pass attempts. I don't think they approached that. And if they did, it was out of necessity because they weren't running the ball effectively. I didn't want to dive too much into the Eagles because I was just going to get depressed and go in my corner and cry. But
you were you're quite right about them not. Oh no, never mind. I was looking at completions, not attempts.
Okay.
They hit. No, they got close. 570, 587, or 597.
Okay, because I had them at 619 total because I did expect Hurts to get a few attempts.
Yeah.
Again, I didn't expect him to play near as much as he did, but I also had Wentz at 30 touchdown passes, and he had like half of that.
I had him at 596 attempts, and they had 597. So I'm pretty fucking happy with myself. Right?
Kudos.
Didn't get anything else right.
I bombed. So yeah.
Oh, don't worry.
I'm purposely going to project the Eagles to have the worst offense next year,
just to hope that you can reverse it.
Spite them. Just to spite them.
So to your credit, I did also have Carson Wentz as top 12 QB rankings.
Yeah, I think we all did.
And I'm pretty sure, so based off 4-point rankings from week 1 to week 13, he was the QB 14. I don't know what he was in 6-point, but we weren't that far off before Jalen Hurts took over. So
he had 5 rushing touchdowns, and I think that definitely helped elevate, his value as a whole. But absolutely. yeah, it's just a bad year altogether.
Yeah, it's Eagles of the dumpster fire of the NFC East were the match that lit the dumpster fire. Not great. Just a guy that Ryan and Josh, you both said Aaron Rodgers, and it's just simply for the fact that no one projected him to have 48 passing touchdowns and be an MVP.
One thing I did want to throw out, outside of the Tampa Bay game, he did not score fewer than 20 fantasy points in any game this season.
Baller. Absolute baller.
Incredible.
Yeah, absolute baller. I think that was Patrick Mahomes last year. I don't think he scored anything lower than 20 points in any fantasy game. He might have had one that was below 20 like Rodgers did. But yeah, an incredible season by Aaron Rodgers. If anyone was thinking that the Jordan Love pick lit a fire under his ass, here is your answer.
Yeah, I would say so.
And for anyone that thought he needed more weapons, they had the weapons. Valdez-Scantling just needed to find his hands.
And I don't think we knew what Tunyon was going to be. I mean,
No,
I
we did not.
None of us had him ranked.
Hold on.
No.
Hold on. Jake Wrongholt, who we had on, I think, last offseason, talked about look out for Robert Tunyon.
Yeah. He was a year too early.
Yeah, a year too early, but he's like, keep an eye on Robert Tunyon. Rodgers loves this guy. He's going to be around. Keep an eye on him. Obviously, it was a year early, but still, he called that a couple seasons ago. So shout out Jake on that.
Here's my ego. I'm such an asshole.
Obviously.
The whole offseason, they talked up, and by they, I mean fantasy Twitter and football Twitter, never the Packers, talked up Jay Sternberger. And then Jay Sternberger talked himself up. About a month before the season started, the Packers said it was going to be Tunyon. And my ass was like, they're fucking with us. It's going to be Sternberger. And I never changed it. And now I'm like, if I had just at least done that, he would have at least appeared in my rankings instead of being not rated by any of us.
Yeah, I was about to say, that's another thing that I need to work on going into next year is I only made one fix with my rankings, and that was when Kelvin Harmon went down and I did my projections, and that's when Terry McLaurin shot up even further than what I had him. So that's the one thing I want to get better at next year is going back through the projections with all of these news breaks and cuts and things of that nature. Yeah. Because after like Geis was cut so late in the season, Adrian Peterson cut so late in the season, I still had them in my projections on the football team. So
yeah, I definitely I always brag about my luckiness of free time. So I as the news moves, my rankings moves. I'm big in my rankings. The hardest part for me was Fournette was traded like what, the day before the season started?
Yeah, it was like the 31st or something he was
cut. And so fixing that in my projections was, I still remember I was like, you motherfuckers. Like I had to go.
I will say he was on my fade list at the beginning of the season, and that was before he was released. So there's that.
36-year-old Mercedes Lewis on the same team scored more points than Jay Sternberger.
Yeah, what a rough whatever that was.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
So to circle back to Aaron Rodgers, I did put him on my list as well because of the touchdowns. But looking back, comparing my my projections to what he finished, I had him for 370 pass completions. He had 372. I had him for 4,300 yards passing, fourth and 299 yards passing. I was off by 1 yard.
Wow.
Should have just rounded up.
Yeah.
If only you could have predicted 48 friggin' touchdowns.
Yeah,
right. That's where I think we
incredible.
all went wrong.
Hey, I had him at 5 interceptions.
Hell of a season by Aaron Rodgers. I did not see that coming.
Yeah, absolutely great season. Really hurting my Aaron Donald to win NFL MVP bet that I took in like week 7. So it hurt, but he was plus 1,000. So I bet $10 to win $1,000. What are you gonna do? Or he was plus 10,000. I take that back. That's why I bet on him. Like either lose $10 or win 1,000.
Can't beat that.
Love the odds. I was like, come on, Aaron, break the NFL sack record. Get 23 for me. He didn't do that, sadly. And Aaron Rodgers lit the world on fire. Just a couple other guys we won't touch on because just want to get to a couple more that we have a little later on. We have Daniel Jones. I think a lot of people probably saw him taking that next step.
Hold on. I have to throw one thing in for Daniel Jones.
Go ahead.
All right. I'm going to throw out a list of quarterbacks here. Nick Mullins, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Joe Burrow, Andy Dalton, Mitch Trubisky, Gardner Minshew, Drew Lock, Carson Wentz, and Drew Brees. What do they all have in common?
They all finished above Daniel Jones.
They all played fewer games than Daniel Jones and threw more touchdowns than he did with his 11 fucking touchdowns in 14 games this season.
The Giants were tied with the Patriots as a team with the fewest passing touchdowns in the NFL this year at 12.
Gardner Minshew and Ryan Fitzpatrick played 5 fewer games than Daniel Jones.
And I feel like half of those Patriots touchdowns were actually thrown by people not named a quarterback.
Yeah.
Jacoby Myers had 2. Edelman had 1. I think there was one other person that also threw a touchdown.
I think Newton
Burkhead
did in week 17.
Burkhead throw one?
I think Burkhead
Myers threw to Burkhead.
Myers threw to Burkhead. Yeah. Burkhead might have also thrown. Listen. All that I know is that we had the reincarnation of Tim Tebow as an NFL player throwing the football.
Yeah, Cam Newton had 8 touchdowns on the season.
Yeah, Jones also...
And still finished as a top 20 quarterback because he had 12 rushing touchdowns.
I just don't want to kill... I know we didn't want to spend a lot of time on Daniel Jones, but one other thing. 16 total turnovers at 2 points per turnover. He erased 5 of his 11 touchdown passes. So...
Oh.
Tell me again how Daniel Jones is good at football.
Yeah.
I love this, right? This is great. So my friend who's he helped coach high school football. He played football all his life. He's currently next year he's going to get his own like youth football team. Really smart guy when it comes to football and thinks he knows a lot about it. He said coming into I believe it was the 2018 draft, correct? Or 2019 draft, whenever Daniel Jones came out. I think it was last season. He said, and I quote, Daniel Jones will be the best quarterback of this class. Keep in mind, Kyler Murray is in the same class. Daniel Jones. So he's trying to convince me that Sam Howell, the kid out of UNC, is going to be a good NFL prospect. I'm like, okay. Mitch Trubisky went to the same school and he plays in the same conference as Daniel Jones. No thank you. Let's move on. So, sorry, Tar Heels fans. Your boy's not going to be good in the NFL. Just suck it up. It is what it is. Your running backs, however, look really good this year. I don't know. I forget the names off the top of my head. All I know is that Giovanni Bernard went to UNC. So, Ryan, your mustache brethren.
I say, great mustache.
Yeah, great mustache. Your mustache brethren. All right. And then another guy, Chris, you just had Ryan Tannehill, so I just want to make sure we get all these names out there. Chris, you had Ryan Tannehill is a guy who you were far off on. And then, Ryan, you just say Gardner Minshew in your heart. I think all of us in our heart had Gardner Minshew much higher than we probably should have.
QB 12 before the injury. Heartbreaking. So.
Yeah. And I made a graphic of him photoshopped onto Captain America, so that really hurt. But hey, Gardner, we still love you, man.
Yep.
Don't worry. Hey, you want to come throw for the Patriots? Be my guest. My God.
I bet Trevor Lawrence is a nice guy, Gardner. You'll have fun with him.
Yeah. Hey, that's Flow City down there.
There you go.
All Trevor has to do is now grow a mustache, and he'll be a true Floridian. All right. One player you never thought would finish where they did. So this isn't you hit on them or you missed on them. This is someone where it's just you're just in awe and surprise that they actually finished in this position. So Josh, you've talked about this guy's regression all offseason, and it clearly showed this season. Lamar Jackson, preseason, you had him at QB2. He ended up QB10. So he's still a top 10 quarterback. But you would think a guy last year, you saw the touchdown regression was going to happen. I don't think anybody expected him to have that same thing. But from a rushing standpoint, he just didn't look as effective.
Well, and I think a lot of that, too, is the Ravens' run game as a whole just took a huge step back. They got really nothing out of Mark Ingram. They were very hesitant to go full-time towards J.K. Dobbins. And we saw when they started giving him more snaps at the end of the season, Dobbins is their best running back, probably outside of Lamar Jackson, who, again, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, first time in the NFL history a quarterback has ever done that. But I think what people are forgetting about this season as a whole, so when you look at 6 point per touchdown scoring, there were 8 quarterbacks this year that topped 400 fantasy points.
That's crazy.
Okay. There has not been since 2010, there hasn't been more than 5 that have crossed that mark in any year. Last year was only 1, and that was Jackson. 2018 saw 4, 1 in 2017, 3 in 2016, 3 in 2015, so on and so forth.
Means we literally had as many this year as we had the last 4 years combined.
Basically, yeah. So, when you look at Lamar Jackson's season from that scope, yes, it was very disappointing. But when you look at it as an outlier, it wasn't as bad statistically as people think. He brought the rushing. He had 7 rushing touchdowns. I projected him at 8. I was only a half a point off on his rushing statistics.
Wow.
Fantasy-wise. So, again, not a bad year from that perspective. His rushing attempts decreased, which I think a lot of us expected that to be because they wanted to, maybe not let their quarterback get hit so much. But I think everybody expected the passing volume to increase, and his attempts actually decreased this year. Now, I think part of that, too, he did miss a game due to COVID. You add that game in there, he's probably right around where he was at last year, which he had 401 pass attempts. He had 376 this year. One game at 25 attempts, I think that's doable for him. But the touchdown percent regression was what we harped on big time. Like, I expected him to fall back down to earth. Every quarterback in NFL history that's passed for that's had a 9% touchdown rate has fallen back to the pack, and only one had topped 7% previously. Lamar Jackson still had a 6.9% touchdown rate. He had 26 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. I projected him at 26 and 10. So again, not very far off. So in terms of that, I was only about 20 fantasy points off. But again, because of the statistical outliers of this season, his season kind of falls back down to earth. And you're like, well, I spent a 2nd round pick on this guy to get QB2 production, and he didn't give me that. He gave you basically what you were expecting. It's just everybody else stepped their game up. So again, from a rankings perspective, it was a miss, but I don't think it was as big of a miss as people expected. Yes, the deep ball wasn't there. There were some accuracy issues, etc. But from an overall statistical standpoint, not as bad as people are making it out to be.
It's just from an on the field perspective. I think again the touchdown regression was going to be there. I think a lot of people, and myself included, expected him to just look better throwing the football.
Yeah.
And he looked like a bat out there. He can't see he can't see the field well, and when he does throw the football, it's horrifically inaccurate. So hopefully, if there's name one person this weekend for the NFL playoffs, there's no one with more pressure than Lamar Jackson. Because if he doesn't perform,
he'll be 0-3.
He'll be 0-3 to start the playoffs. A guy who won an NFL MVP, he'll be 0-3 in his first 3 starts in the NFL playoffs. And coming in, he has a total QBR of 20 in playoff games. Like,
yeah, it's rough.
He has the most pressure. Dude comes off an MVP season. He needs to perform in the playoffs, and he can't understand, like, he can't help that his defense is going to allow 300 rushing yards to Derrick Henry. He can't help that. But what he can do is help it by throwing for 3 touchdowns and rushing for another 2. Because we well know Lamar is capable of doing that.
Well, the big downside is his pass. They've surrounded him with a lot of speed at the wide receiver position, but they're all second-year guys. They're all young guys that haven't really had a chance to take that leap forward. They're expecting these receivers to grow with Jackson, but they're doing it wrong. Look at what Buffalo did. They got an established receiver to help their quarterback, who, again, had 3 of them, actually. Yeah, because they brought in John Brown and Beasley last year, and then Diggs this year. That's 3 guys that have experience in the league. And Cole Beasley is one of the more underrated slot receivers in the NFL, especially when it comes to his hands and his catch percentage.
And if
all Allen has to do is put it somewhere in the vicinity. It could still be a bad throw, but if he gives the receivers a chance, they're going to come down with it. When you have young wide receivers, they're not going to have that same type of success. So they're expecting the quarterback to be the guy that takes the leap, but sometimes you need it on the other side too.
Well, and interestingly enough, if you think to the games you saw Lamar look like he had any sort of chemistry, it was with Willie Snead and Des Bryant, the veterans,
exactly.
not Hollywood Brown. Like those were all just deep shots that actually hit. That's super interesting.
And yes. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
One thing of Lamar Jackson, I think, was probably the most disappointing thing, and you kind of touched on that a bit, Josh, was his passing yardage at only 2,757. That's what, like 190 yards per game. He needs those touchdowns up with passing yards like that, but he only had 376 attempts. Mahomes, Watson, Wilson, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, and almost Aaron Rodgers all had more completions than Lamar Jackson did attempts. So I
think he only had like 5 200-yard passing games all year. Like,
yeah.
Your rushing is only going to get you so far. Like, sure, it's great for fantasy and it's the cheat code, and it probably is going to elevate him more next year when some of these guys come back down to earth with, teams having a full training camp. And I expect defenses to get a little bit better in 2021. God only knows with some of the play calls and the refs and, the rule changes and all that crap that they're doing to increase offensive scoring. But I mean, it's just at a certain point, we need to see that leap from Lamar Jackson. And maybe we're just at a point where he's going to be a reliable fantasy quarterback for maybe 3 more years. But in terms of being an actual NFL quarterback, maybe he's just not going to get there.
And it's just simply the accuracy. We know he has the arm strength because he overthrows his receivers by 10 yards every time he throws the deep ball.
And Hollywood can fly. Excuse me, Marquise Brown. He needs to re-earn the Hollywood.
Hold on, Josh. He had 2 touchdowns in Week 17, and he was considered the best investment by NFL Red Zone on
Chris
NFL
is a
Network.
Sooner fan, so I'm trying not to bash his Sooners, but I wasn't really on the Marquise Brown hype train when he
he has
halfway-
CeeDee Lamb. We can shit on Marquise Brown.
Fair enough. CeeDee Lamb is a boss.
when I was only halfway paying attention to Red Zone. When they announced that as best investment,
what?
I literally went, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I dropped everything I was doing, and it was like, because he scored 2 touchdowns, but then all the rest of his stats, and even as Scott Hansen was saying it, I think he realized how fucking stupid it sounded because you could hear the hesitation in his voice, and I'm like, why would you do this?
My buddy is a Ravens fan. And he said mid-game, he's like, oh, there goes Marquise Brown dropping a wide-open pass. And then I told him it was the best investment in NFL Red Zone, and he blew a gasket. I'm like, it's not. By far is not. Go ahead, Chris.
So I was always a big Hollywood Brown fan, as a Sooners fan. But, I mean, I did like CeeDee Lamb more as a talent as soon as CeeDee was a rookie. Josh can attest to this. But
yeah,
he's unreliable, basically. And, now that I have y'all on the Sooners, just remember Marvin Mims Jr. in 2 years.
All right.
Marvin Mims.
Write it down, Joe. We'll come back to this.
Yeah. 2 years.
I'm writing it down. I'm
not going to lie. That's an NFL ready name right there.
I mean, it's a good name. It rolls right off the tongue. I do want to point out that I did say CeeDee Lamb would be the wide receiver 1 in Dallas, not just fantasy wise in terms of actually a football receiver. I don't care what any of you say. He is the wide receiver 1 in Dallas. Amari Cooper's a flaming pile of garbage. Michael Gallup can't catch the football.
Well,
I'm pretty sure Chris straight up.
I'm just saying he played well this year. He was a lot more consistent, and even without Dak, he was still pretty consistent.
I'm pretty sure Chris just called me and Josh out in the group chat about rankings that we were too low on Lamb at one point. Like, I remember something getting said about that, or I don't remember where it was. But
CeeDee wrote an article about it.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's right. That's exactly what it was. You put out that great article in the preseason telling everybody to buy into Lamb, and we just should have listened.
Yeah, I mean, he finished 24 without Dak. Chris had him at 25. So
Cooper or Lamb?
Lamb.
Lamb.
Yeah, Chris.
Lamb is elite.
His ADP
love-
was like wide receiver 4 or something like that in August.
He was going.
And I still had him projected for 100 targets, if that matters. I mean,
So Josh, you put him as the rookie for our Look Inside series, I believe, on the Dallas Cowboys. And I think my
which was
sleeper,
pretty self-explanatory, but
yeah, and my sleeper at that point was Tony Pollard because you took CeeDee Lamb. But I remember CeeDee Lamb was going as a wide receiver 5 in drafts, and I'm like, thank you, I'll steal him in the 10th round. Love CeeDee Lamb, absolutely great year. Appreciate you, CD. Excited to. I didn't get him in a startup dynasty league, and I was pissed.
real quick
So,
before we move on, and we're
No.
speaking of rookie wide receivers, I
Oh.
got to give a shout out to Lauren
okay.
because I very much lost this bet. I think it was after Justin Jefferson's second super big week that vaulted him into
Did
the
she
top
text
10.
you and say to put this on air right
No,
now?
she literally put it in the chat.
Yeah,
Oh, did she
had
put it
it
in the
on
chat?
Attention, you missed it. So the bet was that Jefferson wouldn't finish in the top 24. She obviously said yes. I said no, and I said that if I win, I get my signed bottle of Tito's that I got stolen from me during the Women of Fantasy event. So I'm making a donation to a charity for her because I lost. So
Wow. Yeah, that must be
and
tough.
I lost bad because
Yeah.
holy crap,
Well, when
he got
you
a lot more consistent by the end of the year, so I'll give him credit for that.
when you
And it helps
break
breaking the rookie receiving.
when you
record.
break Randy Moss's rookie wide receiver record, pretty good year, pretty solid year. So yeah, I think
It is solid.
LSU churns out receivers: Beckham, Landry, DJ Chark, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase this year. If he,
And got for
if-
Terrence Marshall too.
yeah, Terrence Marshall. If you're there in Dynasty and you see Jamar Chase, get him. You need a receiver, draft him. Dude's gonna be a stud.
You don't need a receiver, draft him.
Draft him. Use him as trade
Best
bait.
player available.
Yeah, Jamar Chase is going to be great. All right, so now I'm going to hit on my sleepers. I only had 3 sleepers at quarterback because most of the time quarterbacks just don't end up as sleepers. Obviously, my sleepers are these guys are being drafted too low. I think they're going to outplay their draft stock. So one of these guys did, Baker Mayfield, very much outplayed his draft stock, and there were plenty of weeks where he was a starting fantasy quarterback. One guy was a huge swing and a miss who went to a strip club and was revoked captain status from his team. Dwayne Haskins. Dwayne, I had high hopes for you because I sat there and said, look, you didn't look too bad towards the end of your rookie season. I was like, all right, you're making strides. I can see that. And then I realized you went to Ohio State. So that was the first red flag that I should have waved. Dwayne Haskins, huge miss. Listen, if you took Dwayne Haskins, you took him as your backup. So, you don't castratorize me for that. None of these guys you would have taken as your starter. Maybe Baker. If you're a Browns fan, you might have taken Baker. But hey, we hit on Baker. The other guy, I put him in the miss, but there were weeks where he was a starting fantasy quarterback, and that's Teddy Bridgewater. I felt he was more of a miss than a hit because it just felt like there
He
were
was
more
better in
bad.
the first half of the year. He really
Words out of my
took a
mouth,
nosedive in the end of the
Yeah,
season.
it just
Didn't he
felt
get
like
hurt? I wonder if that injury stuck with him. I remember he
It could have been, yeah.
yeah.
he got
PJ
really
Walker
banged
did
up
play a
in the-
game.
yeah. And it was like a bad. It looked like Bridgewater
like it
would
was
not
bad.
come back in that game. Yeah, I remember that now. I just don't remember all the details.
Yeah, so I put Teddy as a miss. Again, it's tough to analyze, did you hit on a sleeper or did you not for some of these? Like Bridgewater's that line of he had some good games, but it felt like there were more bad than good.
But like you said, you also didn't draft him to be a starter, so no one's
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
the flip side to it, he produced 3 top 30 wide receivers.
All right, so
I
we're
mean,
going to change that to a hit. Where are we? Today.
I mean, something good came out of him as a starter
Yeah.
in Carolina when not very many people were giving him much credit. So
Yeah.
Was
Maybe
that
it was
the
him
game.
or Joe Brady? Was that him or Joe Brady?
You mean Joe Brady?
Oh no, it was definitely Joe Brady. I mean, Bridgewater only threw 15 touchdowns. So
you mean Joe Brady, the soon-to-be head coach of the Houston Texans?
Soon to be head coach somewhere. I agree with that.
No, he's going to be the Houston Texans.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
It's interesting you bring that up, Josh, because then when you go and look at the Washington football team, obviously Haskins sucked, but Alex Smith's numbers weren't much better for fantasy purposes. But McLaurin was great almost all year. Antonio Gibson and J.D. McKissick as pass-catching running backs, and Logan Thomas ended up finishing as like the tight end 3 or some shit like that on the base of like a really good week, I think 16 and 17, but still, even with trash quarterbacks, they were able to produce some decent fantasy assets as pass catchers.
I wanna bring up this question here from Mick Sweet before we get to the last part of the show, Ryan's Stream of the Week year-end stats for the quarterbacks. This is interesting. So he's got pick 3 in his rookie draft. First 2 picks he said are going to be quarterbacks. He's take Devonta Smith at 3. He says he needs a wide receiver and a running back. So do you take Devonta Smith? Do you take a different receiver? Or do you take a running back? Again, this is very, very early. If you take stock in the combine, you haven't seen their combine results. You don't know which team they're going to be on. Listen, to all the jamokes saying Devonta Smith is too small to play in the NFL, just point to Darren Sproles and give him the middle finger. Like, Devonta Smith is going to be a stud receiver. He makes people miss. He's smooth as silk when he runs. It looks effortless when he runs a route. I would argue Devonta Smith or Jamar Chase, but again, I think to me that depends on landing spot for the most part, but I don't know your guys' thoughts on this. I love Devonta Smith.
I'm going to abstain because this is out of my depth completely. I don't even know who the rookies are yet.
Chris watches probably of all 4 of us. Chris watches the most college football.
Definitely.
So
Ryan, just watch the championship and just watch Devonta Smith smoke every single Ohio State defensive back. Every single play. Go ahead, Chris.
So I would probably take a running back here. I know it's super early, but when you have Najee Harris on the board, I find it super hard to pass up on him. I mean, you look at the rookie wide receivers from last year, there's guys in the second and round who hit immediately. Chase Claypool, Michael Pittman,
T. Higgins,
Laviska Shenault. There's some guys that are still projects. There's usually a lot of wide receiver talent. And if I had to go wide receiver, I'd probably go Devonta Smith. Regardless of where people end up, I think that's kind of a misconception here too. I missed on AJ Brown in Dynasty because I was like, nope, I'm not drafting him with Marcus Mariota. Ended up trading for him a few years later, which is good, but landing spot doesn't matter. Go with your gut between Devontae Smith or Najee Harris. That's what I say. Personally,
I like Jamar Chase better. That's just me. There's a lot with Devonta Smith. Look, I think he's absolutely electric. To me, though, I see a lot of Deshaun Jackson in this game. And that worries me because Deshaun Jackson, as great of a playmaker as he is, he's so much better as a wide receiver 2 than a wide receiver 1. And again, maybe I'm in the minority on that, and that's fine. I'm not the type of guy that scouts wide receivers, and I'm not the college aficionado that, like Angelo and Katie Flower are, who will be on our Club Dynasty show on Saturday morning, 11 a.m. Cheap plug. We'll
free plug, actually, yeah.
Free plug, yeah. So
it's our own programming.
And that's the thing. This is going to be a conversation that we have with them. So I would definitely, McSweet, tune into that one, but. I prefer Jamar Chase. I think from a true wide receiver 1 standpoint, I think he has that it factor to me a little bit more so. But I think there's also some guys that have those same traits. I mean, look at Rashad, the Bateman kid, Rondale Moore. Like there's guys that, I think can have very similar trajectories for a wide receiver 1. I think if you're in a position to where, I've always said that build your running back room via the rookie drafts, especially if you have those early picks. if you are a team that is on the fringe of competing, take that running back, because running backs typically have a shorter window than wide receivers. Wide receivers in Dynasty, typically when you hit, they're dominant for 10 to 12 years. And we've seen it's the same thing with quarterbacks.
So, McSweet, you're taking Najee Harris because your receivers are Michael Thomas, Robert Woods, Tyler Boyd, and Deontay Johnson.
Yeah,
Good.
I would definitely go running back in that instance. I mean, look at Harris, look at ETN, look at Javonte Williams. Chuba Hubbard, I wouldn't put him in that same category.
He'll go later.
I know, sadly, Linda loves him.
Chuba, I love the name. Love the name.
But I think he's definitely going to be somebody like a Zach Moss that falls, and that you could probably get in the second. And who knows? I mean, with a good landing spot, he could pop. So,
yeah.
Truman.
Yeah. So, and then his running backs are Saquon and Monty. So I think that's the one you kind of got to shore up a little bit. Obviously, just Saquon with the injury concerns. Monty, you're not concerned about injury at all. We know the talent that David Montgomery brings to the table. But when it comes to receivers, I mean, you draft Devonta Smith or you draft Jamar Chase. Are you really playing them over any of those guys right there?
Yeah, and I think, too, it also depends how many flex spots your league has. I mean, there are some dynasty leagues that, they'll start 2, maybe 3 wide receivers, but then have 4 flex spots as well.
Sure.
While he's not going to land the wide receivers you guys mentioned, there's also a good chance if he held his own second-round pick, he's going to have the 3rd pick of the second round. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like, just based on what you guys have said, there's going to probably be some wide receivers there for him to land there.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, if it's a snake draft, he'll have the back pick.
Well, and that's the thing. Most dynasty drafts aren't snake draft.
I was going to say, I'm going based on my experience.
Is a very unique one in that aspect.
All right. Just bringing that up, that if it's snake, he would fall, again, 10-team league, he'd fall at 8, 12-team, he'd fall at 10.
That's a very good point, though.
So just something to bring about. But
and
Ryan,
I will say, since he did preface that it's not super flex, I'm wondering why these people are taking...
They're taking quarterback at 1 and 2.
Well, Josh...
I know you did. I get that. I'm not saying that was a bad thing. I mean, Kyler Murray's been an absolute stud. So as far as I'm concerned, you made the right pick for your team at that point. So, and McSweet chimes in. He's got pick 3
and 7. Oh, my God.
Realistically, you can take a running back and then still get a stud wide receiver at 7. Because, most rookie drafts I did, CeeDee Lamb was there at 5, 6, and 7.
Yep.
Because everybody was loading up on all the rookie running backs.
Yeah, like Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
If he really likes one of the wide receivers more, to grab the wide receiver, because you guys mentioned 3 to 4 running backs, one of them is going to be there for him at 7 as well. So,
yeah.
I didn't know pick 7 as well. I mean, if both QBs are going 101 and 102, I'd be looking to move pick 3. I think pick 3 would be extremely valuable to the rest of the league. Try and move down, see if you can get 2 first-round picks. And then you could still get 2 elite talent, whether it be Najee, Trey Sermon, ATN, Waddle. Is Waddle coming out this year?
I don't think he's declared yet, but I don't think the window for declarations has closed yet. So
Devonta, those guys. So there's going to be plenty of talent with the QBs going 1 and 2.
And Waddle's a guy that could fall because he got hurt this year.
Right.
He's good too.
Or wait till after the combine and trade pick 3 for a good running back that's already played in the NFL.
Yeah,
you do that too.
Yeah,
I would caution against that. I made
don't
that
trade
move on draft day because I missed out on Jonathan Taylor.
Shout out, Josh.
So yeah.
But in my league, the one that Josh is in, I traded the 107 and the 110 last year for Derrick Henry. So
exactly.
Yeah. Keep that in mind too.
Good return. But yeah, he was saying the first 2 guys had Derek Carr and Kirk Cousins. So they're again when I
you can do worse than Kirk Cousins in Dynasty.
Yeah. Sure, but when I took Kyler Murray, I had Matt Stafford. I'm like, I'm done with this in the lineup, out of the lineup. Let me take Kyler Murray. Mm-hmm. All right, Ryan, to wrap us up here, your stream of the week, year-end statistics. Take it away.
All right, so weekly was not a great season. Only hit 37%, 6 out of 16 picks. Misplaced faith in Daniel Jones and he who must not be named accounted for 5.
Jared Goff?
I don't know who you're talking about,
The
but
GOAT?
that's
Go Rams.
five of my 11 losses right there. So really, what I probably need to learn is if I'm wrong once, I'm probably wrong. So I should just kind of
Wait,
move on.
5 of your 11 losses came at the hands of the 2 guys who have the 2 most turnovers at the quarterback position the last 2
Yeah.
years?
The thumbs up. That's great.
Interesting.
Need to learn my lesson there. On the
I
season,
think the other one was
208
Cam Newton, right?
yeah.
Cam fucking Newton.
Who?
Oh my
Who
God.
was rostered enough that he was never even able to make the stream of the week list. So what does
Okay,
that say
fair
about
enough.
fantasy owners in general?
Yeah, I loved how people when they saw when the Patriots went out and signed Cam Newton, they were like projecting him like stupid high because of X, Y, and Z. I still had him at like 20. And that's where he finished at 19. Like
I had him at like 19 or 20, and then I think he got all the way up to like 13 on mine. But yeah, on the season, my stream of the week, if you just took the number one guy I told you, always available in 50% of leagues, 287 points, QB 17. Bridgewater and Cousins had 5 total games for me over 22 fantasy points. And 22 fantasy points, the reason I brought that up is the QB 12 in fantasy football averaged 22 fantasy points per game. And that's kind of what you're shooting for when you're streaming. When you take my entire top 5 list, I had 2 did not plays. So I hit on 32 of 78. It's not terrible. It was about 41%. But towards the end of the season, I got 11 out of my last 20 right. I showed that I can improve. And then this is the biggest thing for improvement. If you take, I started calling it my best of the bunch score. If you took the best guy from my 5 every week and started him, so essentially you picked better than I did, but still from the same pool I was picking, that quarterback scored 474 fantasy points and was the QB2. So basically, I'm picking the right guys. I just got to put the right guy in the captain seat is the most important thing for me right now.
Yep. Well, we're going to round this out with a quarterback question here from Sean. And this is interesting. So he's the 102 with an orphan team. So this is a team he took over. He says, is Justin Fields a lock to take there? Me knowing what his roster is, Patrick Mahomes, Gardner Minshew, Jarrett Stidham, Brett Rippon, you do not take a quarterback when you have your quarterback for the next 10 years.
if it's super flex,
But it's
you
super
absolutely
flex,
take a
though.
quarterback. Yeah, it's super flex. You're taking a quarterback to pair with Mahomes. I have a super flex league with Ryan where I have Mahomes and Kyler Murray, and I'm sitting with a top 3 pick. Best believe I am taking a quarterback. And I can still start either of those guys because I need a third quarterback. Like, that's how valuable quarterbacks are in super flex.
Yeah, it's insane.
Listen, Sean, take Ohio State quarterbacks with caution. That's all I'm going to say. Just because Justin Fields threw 6 touchdowns against an ACC team doesn't make him a
Clemson's
world beater.
defense has been average all year anyway.
And Skalski got ejected. So, again, take Ohio State quarterbacks at a risk. It depends, too, on where some of these guys fall. Like, if someone, if Zach Wilson falls on a team where he may be the starter, take a shot on Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
Desmond Riddler's draft status has shot through the roof. So if someone wants to take a chance on Desmond Riddler, I think you'd be able to maybe go with
I think
him.
he's going to be somebody that's probably going to fall a la like Justin Herbert, even Lamar Jackson. Like, you could probably get later because you don't think that they're going to start right away.
Sure, yeah, and maybe
You know what I
can
mean?
move-
Because
yeah,
I mean,
maybe-
Ryan and with ours, I know we combined the rookies.
Yeah,
With-
for the startup draft, we just had the
Yeah.
rookies in the startup.
And Chris, I'm trying to think when we did the Parks and Rec League, because I know we did the startup, but then the rookie separate. Herbert was a back end of the first, early second in that draft.
I'm pretty sure he was like.
'Cause I took Burrow and Tua at 3 and 5.
Thank you for that, by the way.
It's okay. I'll live with it.
In my experience, though, I mean, even playing in leagues, and this is no defamation to your league, but playing in leagues with like writers who should know this shit. In back-to-back years in Superflex leagues, I was able to land Deshaun Watson and Josh Allen towards the end of a rookie draft. And I just didn't get it. I thought maybe I was doing something wrong, but man, has it worked out well for me.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like, don't sell yourself on I have to get Lawrence or I have to get Fields because do we think those guys are the top of the class? As of right now, I think you can say with confidence, yes, regardless of how you feel about the history of Ohio State quarterbacks. But Zach Wilson has looked good. Ritter, I think, has come out of nowhere.
Is it Ritter or Riddler? Was I saying it wrong?
I think it's Ritter. I think. Okay, we'll find out more because I know Angela's a big fan of this.
I'm gonna look it up right now.
Did you guys say earlier there's a guy named Bateman?
It is Ritter.
Bateman.
Okay. Like Jason Bateman.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay.
See, we're on the same page.
Like Jason Bateman, the elite actor.
There's like Rondell Moore and what's the...
You got this, Josh.
Absolutely.
This shows how much college football the three of us bozos.
I haven't dove headfirst into the
research
as much.
It is why I immediately volunteered to jump out of the Dynasty show. I'm like, look, I am so good with you guys doing this without me.
That's why we're co-hosting that one, and we're letting Angelo and Katie do all the work.
Go ahead, Chris.
So I again would shop the 102, but if you're dead set on taking a quarterback, let's see where these guys fall. Like, would you guys rather take Fields if he goes to the Jets with Darnold on the team, or would you rather take Zach Wilson who falls to Detroit, and Detroit lets Stafford walk?
I would rather take Zach Wilson.
But see, then you fall into the same conversation of, do I downgrade AJ Brown just because of the situation that he landed?
Well,
at that point, it's
not true either.
You take talent, right? If you believe that Justin Fields is a better talent than Zach Wilson, regardless of the situation, that's who you take. You take the guy that you think is most talented. We fell into that trap with DeAndre Swift as well. DeAndre Swift goes to Detroit. They've ruined running backs. CEH, look, you can say if you believe in Kansas City, the system, whatever. I wasn't that high on CEH pre-draft, right? Yeah. Then he lands in Kansas City. And I shot him all the way up to 2. I was still on the Jonathan Taylor hype train because I think he was the best running back in the draft class. But then you look at what CEH did this year in Kansas City. They had a couple games where they absolutely fed him and they relied on him. But the way that this offense is constructed with Patrick Mahomes, they don't need the running game the way that Andy Reid needed, like Brian Westbrook and LaShawn McCoy with Donovan McNabb. Yeah. So I think there's maybe some hiccups in moving the CEH up, but again, if you believe in the talent, DeAndre Swift was my RB2 before the draft. Should have kept him there, but it is what it is. So.
I think there's a difference here, though, with running backs and wide receivers as compared to quarterbacks. Like Mahomes fell in a beautiful spot. Let's see, Herbert. I was really big on Herbert preseason, and I think the Chargers got away with one with the Dolphins taking Tua and then them taking Herbert. There's a reason why that's probably going to be the most coveted job in the NFL this year is the Chargers head coaching position. I just think you got to look at, for quarterbacks specifically, you got to look at coaching, you got to look at system. What do they have around them to succeed right away? Are you okay with waiting around if they're a backup QB right away? I don't know. Quarterbacks for me are different than.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely shop the 102, but at the same token, it's like, how far down are you willing to go, knowing that you need to grab a quarterback? You know what I mean? And I think that's the biggest question. Like, if nobody throws you any offers that you deem good enough, you're going to stay at 102 and you're going to take a quarterback. And at that point, it becomes, which do you trust more? Because right. I don't believe in trading just for the sake of trading. Like, if I'm sitting in a prime spot, especially in a super flex league, I'm going to get a respectable haul for that pick. And if I don't get it, I'm going to take my guy and just move on. So
I just know people love draft picks in the offseason. I love trading away draft picks for that reason. So if you hang on to it, the closer you get to your rookie draft, the more people will be willing to pay for that 102.
No, I agree with you.
And then during the draft, maybe not the 102, but then during the draft, everyone's willing to sell their picks again. So if there's a guy you see who's following,
they're going to get a lot of future picks.
Yeah, no. All good stuff. All right, that's all we have, ladies and gents. about 80 minutes in right here. So that was.
This has been one of our shortest shows in a while.
I know, right? Right.
I kept you all right to the point.
Thank you,
You're
Chris.
welcome.
Right. So next week, still going to be accountability, still wrapping up the season. We have our running backs next week. So getting into a lot more fun, obviously a lot more players to talk about at the running back position than there would be at the quarterback position. So super excited to get that going. Chris will be back with us. So don't worry, Chris ain't going anywhere. He's with us the entire month of January. And this also, we have 3 shows this week. Oh, this is news to me.
3 shows this week. Yeah.
I'm reading the outro. Again, this shows you how much I read the doc before the show, and I'm the one that created it. Be sure to check out. So it's the next episode of DFS and Chill. If you missed it, it was the first one on Sunday. It was at 11, correct?
Fantastic, by the way.
Yeah.
I tuned in because I'm such a control freak. I had to make sure everything went off the rails.
I couldn't tune in because I was grocery shopping.
Ryan, you, Kira, Mike absolutely killed it. It was fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to Friday night.
Yeah.
Except I won't be able to watch because I'm working, so I'll have to catch it on replay.
Now we just need Kira and Mike to yell at each other more. That's the key.
Josh told me I have to tell them they're stupid this week.
Yeah. Ryan, the key to being a good host is demeaning the guest you have on. That's the key. The key is you need to put them in their spot, put them in their place, and say, hey.
Joe, you'll love in my show doc this week, I literally wrote in parentheses next to like one category, feel free to disagree.
Yeah, that's perfect. Even if I don't disagree, I will take the opposite side just for fun.
I think I might have to start doing that because especially with DFS, and we'll talk about this more later, obviously, but with DFS, the plays tend to be the plays. So I might just have to start being the guy who's like, are you idiots sure about that?
Well, it's
but
funny
they did so damn well. They were right about so much. I don't know when to ruin their vibe.
I saw y'all. I was at the grocery store, so I was quickly listening in. I think you were talking about receivers. You were talking about like lower name guys that may pop off, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, Darnell freaking Mooney is gonna pop off, and I didn't type it in the chat, and I hate myself for it because Darnell Mooney had a day.
The moment that I heard Mike bring up Andy Dalton, I was like, oh man, where's Joe to tell him he's an idiot?
Andy Darts. Andy Darts.
I called it. I called Andy Dalton week 16. Just throwing that out there over Russell Lopez.
Andy Darts?
I know that was kind of like that wasn't like his absolute must play. It was like a if you're absolutely
that was
desperate,
his deep sea dive. Yeah.
Which I mean, look, if you're gonna miss, those are the guys you miss on. So
red rifle,
their favorite plays. Ryan Tannehill and Kirk Cousins were their top plays. So
the red rifle out of the NFL production school, Texas Christian University of the Big 12 with only 10 teams in it. You mean the elite school that has produced Josh Doxson and Jalen Reagor? And who the hell did the Seahawks pick in the first round this year that shouldn't have been drafted in the first round? LJ Collier, was that the guy at a TCU? God.
Hey, TCU gets a fantasy pass on LaDainian Tomlinson.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, that's fair. But again, TCU's produced one guy since the turn of the century? Congratulations, TCU, you made it.
Josh Doxson can still hit. Give us time.
As soon as he gets signed again, he's going to be a problem.
Josh Doxson needs to learn how to bag groceries at his local supermarket.
Oof.
Right? Yeah. No. Jalen Reagor's going to be in that boat, too. Just you watch.
Shut your damn mouth.
I'm with Josh on that one.
Just wait.
I'm
just
neutral.
wait.
I'm neutral.
Josh Dotson, that is.
Yeah. Remember when the Eagles drafted J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and we were like, oh, he'll be good.
Yep.
Yeah. Out of the NFL churner for the wide receiver position, Stanford. Name me one good Stanford wide receiver.
Richard Sherman.
Wide receiver.
Plays on the other side. He covers the receiver.
They've done well with tight ends.
He went to Stanford as a wide receiver, though.
Yeah, but he played defensive back, you ass. That's like Ryan Tannehill went to A&M and played 2 years of wide receiver. Like, that doesn't count.
Stanford wide receiver great, Richard Sherman.
God, I hate you. Okay, so the DFS and Chill is at some point this week.
7 o'clock Friday.
Yeah, sure. So at that time, Ryan said it. I'm not going to say it again because he made me mad. Club Dynasty is on Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern. It's essentially just replacing starts at different day this Saturday. Bringing back Angelo, who we haven't had on in almost a year. So excited to have him back on. And then Katie Flower as well, first-time guest, the diva of Devi. So super excited to have them on.
So excited to have her on. She was telling me that every year she goes down to the Senior Bowl to interview players, and she's sad that she doesn't get to do that this year. She's like, "Oh, I'm getting ready to pull out my spreadsheets." I was like, "Oh, we got to step our game up, shit."
Yep.
That's going to be awesome.
I cannot wait.
All you two need to do is shut up.
Oh, that's all. That's all. That's all I plan on doing.
Yep.
Just be like, all right, here's this question. Go.
I say I'm going to tune in and start my pre-draft sheet for my dynasty leagues.
Take notes.
Don't know what the
Every
word.
time we have Angelo on, he is fantastic.
Yeah,
Katie
I don't
is
know.
great too, and haven't had a chance to have her on. I'm so freaking excited. So excited.
I don't know what the word "shut up" means. So
Yeah, that's fair.
No, I mean, honestly, neither do I, but still.
yeah. Well, you're a
I'm
boisterous.
gonna try.
You're a
I'll be-
boisterous Eagles fan. What are you gonna
I'll
do?
be in the chat telling you guys to shut up.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, you ring the bell
That's fair.
virtually.
Yeah, just like bell.
Yep.
Yeah, appreciate
Bell
it.
emoji over and over again.
Much appreciated. And also, last thing, Gabe, congrats, buddy. The Browns
Yeah.
made the playoffs.
Yeah, cheers.
Gabe,
Dude, they're getting so railroaded with Stefanski testing positive for COVID. Let the man coach from his living room.
Yep.
Put a
And-
camera on him. I don't
hold
care.
on,
That shit would
hold
be
on.
great.
Listen, Gabe, I'm happy that you finally get to see a playoff game with your
They're
favorite
still
team.
getting screwed, though.
Did I want to see them lose to the Steelers so badly? Because that would be the epitome of Cleveland Browns football. They lose to the Steelers and get kicked out of the playoffs. The epitome of Cleveland Browns football.
Unfortunately, might still happen. on Sunday
Unfortunately,
night.
might still
Yeah.
happen because they play.
Yeah, I feel so bad for Cleveland and their fans right now. Like, they've waited so long for this moment, and it's just like no head coach, who also is their play caller, by the way.
Yep.
No
And
Joe Bitonio, their offensive guard.
yeah, God,
They're still gonna
Jesus,
win.
man.
They're still gonna win.
I hope they do. I mean, they barely beat Rudolph in Steelers-led offense. So,
Listen, hey, 2020's in overtime. Anything can happen.
I'm with you.
Mason Rudolph seemed to me to be an upgrade from Big Ben. I'm just saying.
We just
Yeah,
talked
Big
about
Ben
those
really
air yards.
Big Ben and his elite
Chase,
air
Chase
yards.
Claypool looked great on
Listen,
week.
I'll
in week
give
17.
I'll give Ben a pass on his completion percentage because his receivers don't understand what catching
Yeah.
is. So that's a guy I'll give a pass on. But that's all we have. Join us next week. Well, I guess, for the next couple shows on Friday with Ryan, Kira, and Mike from Ball Blast. On Saturday with Angelo and Katie Flower. And then next week, all four of us will be back to talk about the running backs, wrapping up the 2020 season for the running backs, holding ourselves accountable as we should do and as everyone should do because no one hits on all their picks, as we have seen today. So, just to wrap up, you can follow Club Fantasy on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Club Fantasy FFL. The URL is clubfantasyffl.com, where Chris Molina has guaranteed he will be writing more in the offseason. So we'll hold Chris accountable for writing more in the offseason. But you can check out the work there. Always remember, defense wins championships, offense wins fantasy football. Enjoy Super Wild Card Weekend. They're making this out to be this incredible thing.
Because there's 2 extra games.
Super wild card weekend, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to want to tune in because you're not going to want to miss the invigorating matchup where the Saints lose to the Bears in the Superdome. Call it right now.
I'm with you.
The choke artist named Drew Brees and Sean Payton. Oh, can't wait. Absolutely can't wait. Enjoy the games. We will see you actually on Friday, so you can join Ryan on Friday to get ready for those games. And him, Kira, and Mike will be getting you guys ready to play some DFS for the playoffs this weekend. Enjoy your evening. We will see